I'm Lindsay. I'm the Director of Sustainability from the Greenberg Nature Center, and today we're going to talk about urban agriculture and things that we can grow in our homes straight through the winter, since our gardening season here in New York is over. So today I have 4 different types of urban agriculture that we're going to talk about. The first 3 are about growing plants and vegetables in your home, and the next one is actually about growing mushrooms in your home that you can harvest and eat straight through the winter. So to start, the reason that we talk about urban agriculture, number 1 is seasonality. So obviously in New York, it's too cold during a good number of the months where we cannot grow anything outdoors that we enjoy eating. So instead we move it indoors. Another reason that we use urban agriculture is some of the practices are actually really good for the environment. They don't use a lot of water. They use electricity, so you can do it anywhere that you'd like. And they also sometimes don't use soil. So all of the things that we're doing today, at least 3 of them, use no soil in the process. And even though that changes the idea of the agriculture, it saves our soils, and we need healthy soils for our environment to pull carbon dioxide out of the air. So the less that we use them for agriculture, the more that we can use them for other purposes, right? So these ways are really great ways that you can grow food right in your home, super local, no delivery, right? It's not traveling far distances to get to you. You know it's organic, you know where your seeds came from, you know you didn't spray pesticides or herbicides, right? So this is a really great way to do that. So I'm gonna start over here, because this is one of my favorite systems. So this I just bought online, and you can buy this online. They range in all different prices, and this is an Aerogarden System. So the way that this works is this is hydroponics. So you can see that I just took it out of the box. So if I pull this out here, this here is our light. So this can move up and down as the plants grow, and it's gonna plug in and it will be put onto a timer. And then here, this system here, this gray part is gonna lift up, and that's where we're gonna put in our water. So you're gonna add water, and this system is really great for beginners because it also gives you everything that you'll need. So it came with our nutrients, which is just liquid plant food. So this is all things that you would find in nature, naturally in the soil, that we're just gonna add to our water. And what's gonna happen is we're gonna plug it in. The plug is gonna power the lights, but it's also gonna power a small pump in the bottom of this water tank that's gonna push the water up so that it hits our seed pods. So Aerogarden sells these seed pods already made for you, so it makes it, again, very easy for the beginner to try to do this. But there are other ways that you can do hydroponics where you don't use the plastic, and you can do it all on your own. For this system though, you do have to use the aeroponic pods. So what happens here is you can say that this one is called curly parsley, and you can see that inside there's basically a little pellet of soil, and then within that is our seeds. So super easy. The way that this works is you pop these right into the holes, and the bottom of this is gonna reach the water. The water through osmosis is just gonna rise up, gonna constantly keep this area wet, and it's gonna give it the perfect amount of water it needs. Not too much, not too little, and the perfect amount of nutrients that it needs, right? So it allows you to grow really healthy plants really fast. So another reason you might wanna do something like this is you can grow hydroponic plants about 30% faster than if you were growing outside. Reason for that is the weather is always perfect, the nutrients is always perfect, and the plant always has the perfect amount of light that it needs, okay? So all of those things allow for faster growth. So again, super easy, you pop all of these in. So I believe this kit came with all different types of herbs. We have mint, so these would go in here. Again, we would fill this with water, we would add our nutrient solution into here, we would pop it on here, and then we would turn on the light system. And basically this would grow us full-size plants that we can harvest multiple times. The herbs are really great because if you like to cook with herbs, you can just take little cuttings as you go. But you can also grow things like tomatoes, lettuces, anything that is an above ground plant. So in this system, you're not gonna be growing like carrots or potatoes, nothing like that, but you can grow a lot. That's anything above ground. So again,
are they gonna be like, I guess, smaller than like you would originally like plant them outside?
Yes, so they will be smaller, not because the seed or anything is different, really just because they're gonna be aware of the space they have. So they'll kind of squish themselves in here. You'll see that some of them will grow faster than others, so they might become the bigger ones. And everything is a little bit of an experiment. So even where you place these would be an experiment. So usually you'll want to put the taller ones in the middle or on the back, right? And you want to keep it in some sort of a size order so that you can make sure the smaller plants don't get shaded out and taller ones, right? So again, this system is very straightforward. All you do is pop in the plugs and you plug it in and then you start growing, and that's it. It pulls minimal amount of electricity because all of the lights are LEDs, and that's all that the plants need to grow to do photosynthesis. So this is a really great hydroponic system, and what I brought with me is actually a piece from our hydroponic system at the Nature Center. So what you can see hanging here, there is definitely algae on it, and the reason for that is because the nutrients, when they're exposed to sunlight, create algae, which isn't horrible. So if I was doing this for selling, I wouldn't want algae on my product, but I could still eat this. There's nothing wrong with this lettuce. Now, this is the roots. And in here, I have this green kind of spongy material, and I'm gonna just squeeze it so you could see how much water is in it. Okay, so it's a very spongy material. This is called rock wool. And rock wool is something that's used often for insulation, but it's made of sand. And you can see that I can actually just break it right down into my hands, and this can then be composted. So instead of the plastic that I have on this system, I can use rock wool. Now, the rock wool serves two purposes. It holds my plant in place, it allows it to absorb water, and it gives it something for the roots to grab onto. So see how long this root system is just for a lettuce? This was sitting in a system like this, and the roots were just touching the water. The rock wool made it stable, and that was how this lettuce was able to grow, okay? So this lettuce, again, is something that you can grow right out of a system like this, a full-size lettuce. The really great thing about lettuces too, especially hydroponically, is that you can do something called cut and come back. So you are able to harvest this lettuce. So let's say I wanted to eat this. I could hold it here, I could cut at the base. As long as I leave some of the newer leaves, I'll be able to harvest this lettuce 2 to 3 times. So you don't have to start from scratch every time. It saves you some time as well. So any questions about hydroponic growing?
And like after like you cut the lettuce, and it like harvests again.
Yeah.
You said like they usually come out like more different than like the first one's like smaller,
Yes.
I guess. Or...
Exactly. So when you think of a plant, the base of a plant starts as the seed. The seed is the baby, and the seed is what holds all of the nutrients that is going to get that plant from seed to sprout. Now, once it becomes the sprout, those nutrients are then dispersed across the entire adult plant. And we're also going to talk about that with our next part. But basically, if you think about it, the first round of the seed used its nutrients to make these leaves. Now, the rest of the time, the nutrients is going to be pulled from the soil or from the water for the rest of the plant. So it can change flavor, it can change nutritional value, right? So usually when you're eating, you just want to be aware of how many times you've done cut and come back. You don't want to do like 8 cut and come backs, right? Because that is really going to change your nutritional value of your food, but it's still local food grown by you, pesticide, herbicide, chemical free. So it's always going to be a healthy alternative, even if it's on your 3rd harvest. Yeah. Any other questions? How many can go in here? So we could do 6 at a time in this system. In this system that we have at the Nature Center, we can do 30 of these. So it looks more like a table, and the water actually is pumped up and then flows downhill, and each of these sits in a little hole, right? So you can do this in warehouses now, and you'll see in urban areas. They'll fill entire warehouses, floor to ceiling, and these kind of systems will actually be up on the wall. So you'll harvest plants from the sides of the walls, right? So there's a lot of ways that you can do this, and you guys can definitely look up some videos and see how it's done. And you can absolutely buy a system like this, and they make them smaller. They do sell them on Amazon if you're trying to get it quickly, right? And they sell them all different sizes, all different types. Yeah.
And like what kind of stores, like Home Depot or?
Home Depot would have this one, absolutely. There's hydroponic stores all over. There's a really great one in Yonkers. I think it's called Follow the Sun, something like that. So hydroponic stores do exist, but they're less common right now. So for the most part, online is going to be your best bet. And there are stores online that are just do hydroponic, aeroponic, urban gardening type of things. And there's a lot of different ways to grow food like this. So basically the main piece here is that the water is recycled. So when you're watering a field, a lot of the water is lost to the system, so into the soil, or it evaporates from heat. In this system, any water the plant doesn't use just keeps going around.
Yeah.
Yes, eventually you have to fill it up, right? It's gonna come through the plant's butt a lot less often. The other thing that it's doing again is with the soil. So we're not having to use any soil in this system. Can you use soil in the system? Absolutely. Some of the systems will get clogged though, because again, you're using a pump to move the water up. Okay, so this is our hydroponic system. This one is actually more aeroponic, so meaning that it kind of mists air and water into the plant roots. Hydroponic is usually more of a flowing, so the plant sits and water will flow down a slope and just hit the root base. Okay, so that's one piece of urban gardening, and we can finish putting this together as a group. So our next piece is sprouts and microgreens. So again, like we were talking about, when you have a seed, the seed as the baby is holding all of the nutritional value that this plant is going to be as an adult. The farther away you get from seed, the more dispersed or spread out the nutrition gets, right? So if I had this lettuce as a little tiny baby sprout, the one that's more nutritionally dense, the one with the highest nutritional value, even though this is the adult, is actually gonna be the little tiny baby sprout, okay? So microgreens and sprouts are actually becoming a very popular health trend because you're able to grow them at home and you're able to sprinkle them into almost all of your dishes, adding spice, flavor, buttery crunch, all different things, and they're very, very healthy for you. Okay, so they have a really high nutritional value and they're very easy to do and grow. Honestly, anybody could do it. So I'm gonna start with sprouts because these are the easiest ones. So the way that we did this is I ordered us some mason jars online. They come with this normal lid here. And what I've ordered also online is a sprouting jar lid. So you can order them. This one came with the top and bottom, but you can also just order this piece too. You can also make this. So you can go to a craft store, you can just buy a little piece of twine like that, and you can stick it into the lid that it comes with. It doesn't have to be perfect. And the only purpose of this is to drain water, but you have to make sure that these holes are small enough that you don't also drain the seeds. You can see like these seeds are very tiny, so we don't want the seed to go through, and even like these seeds are even smaller. So I probably wouldn't use these broccoli seeds with this lid. Okay.
These seeds are so small.
They're so tiny. So the way that this is going to work is that we're going to put these seeds in the jars, and I have a jar for each of you that you're gonna get to do. And how much you put is really up to you. It's about how much you're gonna eat. So I would say if I put maybe another little handful in here, I'll probably get about a half a jar of sprouts. Now the thing about sprouts is that they're not going to last as long in the fridge, so you have to eat them within like 3 to 5 days. So you wanna make sure that you don't do too many. And so the first step with growing sprouts is you put your seeds in. Now, these seeds we've also ordered online, and I have a whole variety. You can use any seeds. You don't have to use seeds that are labeled sprout seeds. There is a difference though where the farmers or the seed provider is gonna select for traits that are favorable to growing sprouts. So if you have seeds, you can use those, but if you wanna get specific seeds, you can do that as well. And the really cool thing is that these are from a place called Sprout House, is that they'll make mixes for you. And that's because they make more flavor, right? So this is a mix of mung beans, peas, lentils, so all different types and all in one. If you just want broccoli, you could just do broccoli, right? Yeah. But the cool thing about the online stores is that they make the mixes for you, which is pretty cool. So what's gonna happen here is for one night, I'm gonna soak this in water. So we would fill it up to about here and we would soak it. This prepares the seeds to start sprouting. Usually when seeds are in this state, they're dormant. They're kind of like sleeping. So we have to kind of wake them up. The way to do that is to add water. And then the next morning when you come, you'll see that these seeds have gotten a lot bigger. They've absorbed a lot of the water. And then you're just gonna start draining them. So once you've done that first step of soaking overnight, you're gonna come that next morning, you're gonna put your lid on like this. So you'll have water in here, and then you're just gonna drain it like that. Shake it out, shake it out. Then you're gonna rinse and repeat. That's all that you have to do. And in about 3 to 5 days, you'll have finished sprouts that you can eat. The constant thing that you have to do, even if you start eating, right? Because you can eat over 3 to 5 days, so you don't have to eat them all in one sitting. You always have to rinse and repeat. Main reason for that is you don't want mold or bacteria growing on the sprout, so it just keeps everything flowing and it makes sure you don't get anything funky in your jar, okay? So rinse, repeat, and you can just put water right in through the top, shake it up, empty it. Some of these lids that you buy will come with a little stand and it will let it sit like that in your sink. I just kind of get a big bowl and I put it like this in the bowl so that basically the water just keeps draining into the bowl, okay? So that's really it about sprouts. Super simple. Yes.
I have a question. So I soaked them. I emptied the water. I soak them again. They're starting to grow. There's little green things growing.
Yes.
I'm not going to eat them all,
Yes.
but I still going to the next day drain out the water
Yes.
and put more water in.
Yes.
Okay.
So you only soak one time. The first time overnight you soak. Then from then on, I usually do every morning, every night, just a routine. I go to the sink, fill with water, give it a little shake, empty. That's it. Until the next night, then I fill with water, empty. And that's kind of how that works.
Okay, the empty was the key
Yes.
because I'm like, okay, I wasn't sure if you had to put the water, fill it with water each night, but
No,
you don't.
Just the first night and you leave the
Okay.
water. After that, it should always be empty, always kind of tipped over like this so that the water can just constantly drain. If they sit in water, that's when you're gonna have mold or bacteria.
Okay.
Okay, so the important thing also about sprouts is they don't need light. So think about when you plant a seed in the ground. From the moment you've planted it until you see the first leaves, the seed isn't exposed to light at all, right? So we have to wrap if you need to. You can also refrigerate them. So let's say you feel that you have them, they're at their full growth, but you're not ready to eat them all. You can empty them into a Tupperware, put them in your fridge, and that will give them a longer shelf life too. So again, very tasty. You could eat an entire thing of these and that could be your meal, but most people choose to sprinkle it onto different meals. So it could be in addition to a salad, a burger, pasta, really anything that you're making could be a great addition, and they're very flavorful. So again, this is gonna have more nutritional value than this. Now, if I take another step over, we're talking about microgreens, this is gonna be the highest nutritional value that I can get from a crop that I grow in the winter indoors, and also just in general. Microgreens are one of the most nutritionally dense crops that we can grow. And again, it's because I'm harvesting right from the seed, right at the very beginning. So I'm not allowing it to become its adult. So the difference here is that in this type of growing, we are using soil. So in our first two, we haven't used any soil. This system here, we're using soil. You can grow this hydroponically, but you have to add the nutrients. But the easiest way I think to grow it is with soil. You can also do something called cocoa coir and compost. And so any substrate is all you need because again, all of the nutritional value is in the seed already. We don't need anything with really high nutrition because it's coming right from the seed. It's gonna grow to be about 3 to 5 inches. Then you're gonna harvest it and eat it. So it doesn't need a lot of nutrients like something like a lettuce would to get this big. So the way that this will work, and we'll go out and we'll get some soil too, is that you would fill this with soil. You can fill it right to the top, and it doesn't have to be that deep. So this is more than deep enough. Something like this is deep enough. You can they sell huge trays that you could use too, so it depends what you wanna do. And the way that this works is you actually pack in the seeds really densely. So what I'm gonna do is we'll fill this with soil, we'll kind of layer it out. It is a good idea to put a little bit of water on the bottom. So what we'll usually do is you just kind of give this a spray, and then you'll put your soil in, and it's not that much water, you can see. But the reason that I do that is because all of these, the sprouts and the microgreens, are prone to mold. So if you keep it too wet, it will get moldy. Now that means that you're not gonna sell the crop. You yourself can decide if you feel comfortable eating it after washing it, but for the most part, you don't want moldy crops. So if we put the water in the bottom, then we add the soil, it encourages the roots to go down because they're looking for the water. Okay, so we're doing that, and then that will give them enough water just to start their life, and then from there we can start watering. So with microgreens, you can water with a spray bottle. You don't have to water the entire tray. The easiest way to do it, and the way that we do it, is that we actually get 2 of these. Okay, so you get 2 of these, and what you'll do is you poke holes into this one. And then you start the seeds in this one, and then you fill this one with water, and you place this one in here. And then anytime you want to water, you just pick this one up and just pour water into here. then you don't have to worry about wetting the crop and getting mold on the crop. So that's a really good way to do it, but not necessary. So again, holes in the one that you planted, and then no holes in the bottom tray, water in the bottom tray, second tray at the top.
Yeah.
Now the other thing that you have to be aware of is, again, same thing with these, the seeds need to germinate in the dark. So most of the time you'll leave them in the dark for 2 to 3 days. Again, the easiest way to do this is to either get a bigger one, and you can cover it like that. The other way, that's actually the best way to do it, is to have a third that's this size, and to put it right on top, and to even put a weight on top of it, up to 5 pounds. And you will see, so in the system that I use, I actually put a 10-pound brick on a big tray, and you will see in like 3 to 5 days, the sprouts are so strong they will pick the brick up, and that's how I know that it's time to remove the brick and expose them to light. So they're very strong, and it's pretty impressive what they do. But for the first 2 days, at the very least, they have to be in complete darkness so that they can start to sprout. Then, when you feel that they've gotten long enough, then you're gonna expose them to light. Once you expose them to light, they're not gonna get too much longer. They're just gonna turn green. And then you have about 5 to 10 days to eat them. So with microgreens, for something like broccoli, I would say you could have your finished crop in about 7 or 8 days. So 2 to 3 days in darkness, then you're gonna expose it to light. And then after that, after 7 days when you've started eating it, you have about a week to finish it. The really great thing with this, again, is you reduce your food waste because you have a live tray. If I go buy microgreens at the store, they'll be nicely packaged for me, but if I don't finish eating them, they're gonna go bad quickly. If I don't harvest them from the tray and I just keep watering them, I could have live microgreens for 10 to 12 days that I just keep eating. So we'll talk about that. And again, the way that this is gonna work is I'm gonna fill soil, and then we're gonna put so many of these broccoli seeds that you're not really gonna see the soil, okay? So usually there's a math equation that people will do for it by the ounce. There's something called a 10-20 tray, which is a tray that's about this big. We use about an ounce of seeds for that. So for this, we're gonna use a smaller amount, and we'll show you a close-up of when we've done that. So again, we have hydroponic, aeropotic, we have our sprouting, and then we have our microgreens. Okay, so our final one that we have is our mushrooms, which I think is pretty cool. This is something that's a little bit newer. And what I've done is I've bought these kits online. You can actually grow mushrooms on your own without the kits. It's a little bit, you need a little bit more experience, but the way that this works is I opened this one and I started it just to show you. And I think you guys can take this one home to try, which is cool. So what you basically do is you pop this window out. On the inside, you have what's called mycelium, or spores and spawn, on a substrate box. So when I got it, it looks like this. Now all this white stuff, it looks kind of like mold. This is actually really amazing stuff. This is mycelium. Mycelium is essentially the root of a mushroom. And when it turns all white like this, it's basically colonizing, it's taking over the substrate that is in this box. And I think our substrate here was sawdust. So basically, this was a bag of sawdust. They injected, and you can see this white piece here. It has to be sterile because it's a fungus, right? So if you have a fungus growing, that means you could also grow mold and other bacteria. So they do it in a very sterile way, which is why it's easiest to just buy the boxes and grow it if you don't have a lab. But you can also do it without a lab in urban agriculture. So basically, they've injected spores into this. It used to be just a bag of sawdust or grain. And then this starts to take over. Once you see it all white, now it's ready to fruit. So again, this is kind of like the roots. And just keep in mind, this is not a plant, a fungus, this is a fungus. A mushroom is a fungi, it's a totally different type of, it's basically different than everything. It's not a mammal, it's not a plant, it's not flora, it's a fungi. So these guys are ready to fruit. The fruiting body is the mushroom. It's what you see above ground, it's what you eat. So these here are oyster mushrooms, which are really delicious and becoming very popular, and you can buy them at farmers markets. And what will basically happen is I've opened this bag here, I've soaked it overnight, and then I've given it a little spritz of water, and I've broken up the mycelium. And you can see these little pieces here are starting to become these little tiny heads of mushrooms. And in about 3 to 5 days, this is gonna be filled with mushrooms. They grow really fast. In about 10 days, you can harvest it. The really cool thing is that you'll get multiple, it's called a flush. It's a harvest for mushrooms. You'll get multiple flushes out of this. So you can harvest it about 2 or 3 times. And then what's basically gonna happen is that the grain spawn, or the grain that's in here, is the food, or the sawdust is the food. So when they run out of food, that's when you stop having mushrooms, right? So the mycelium, the white stuff, will eat through. It'll keep growing the mushrooms until it runs out of the grain or the sawdust that's in here. And then you can actually compost everything that's in the bag and start over. So this is growing mushrooms at home. All right, any questions? And I can, if you want to zoom in, Susie, so this is kind of what it will look like once you've had it. And you always want to spray it. It has to be moist, right? So think of where you find a mushroom growing. It's always wet, it's damp, so you have to keep them moist. But other than that, it's a very straightforward way that you can grow your own mushrooms at home.
And do you keep them like in the box? Like,
Yes, so the reason that they have this in the box is I think just for look. It doesn't have to be in the box, but it is nice that it can stand it up for you. You're gonna spray it and then you're just gonna let it sit. This, you do want to have some sunlight. The light is what allows it to know that it's time to fruit. If you don't expose it to light, like when it was in this closed box, it's not gonna fruit. It's just gonna stay like this. The mycelium is gonna keep taking over the bag, and then as soon as you put the light on it, then it will start to fruit and grow your mushrooms.
So the mushrooms is just gonna run this up.
So this kit online was about $20. So it is a little expensive, but again, if you were to buy oyster mushrooms at your farmer's market, for the amount that you would get out of here, you would spend well over $20. So it can be worth it, for sure.
They usually sell them in like little blue trays.
In the little tiny, right? So you're getting a very small amount. These are definitely worth it, and it's really fun to watch them grow as well. And again, you're reducing your food waste. You're harvesting the mushroom when you're ready to eat it. Also, with all food, the highest nutritional value of your food is right after harvest. When food travels really far to you, it loses nutritional value over time. Okay? So this is the best and healthiest way to do that.